Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Side Effect, our midweek flicker effect kind of sideshow. I'm David Lotz. Joining me is Bobby Jackson. What's up, Bobby?
Hey, what's up? Not much. It's been a little bit since we've recorded one of these, so it's good to be back.
It's been a little bit since we've recorded anything.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, it's been a while. The holidays happened. We had every intention on trying to fit in a show or maybe two in there in the holidays, and it just didn't work out. The holidays. That's all I got. But
Yeah, everybody understands. I'm sure they were probably busy doing things as well, so it's back to business now that it's the third.
Yeah, it is January 3rd of 2018. And yeah, it kind of started off with a couple announcements, speaking of that date. But yeah, now that we're back, just want to let everyone know you can, at this point, kind of look for a regular schedule of releases. Our regular shows usually post Monday nights around 9 p.m. Eastern. So make sure to look out for that every week. And when we can record a side effect, which we're going to try to do more often, we usually record these Wednesday nights. These will actually most likely be posted later Wednesday night. About 10 p.m. Eastern. So, yeah, look for both of those shows each week. You can check us out on iTunes, Google Play Music, whatever podcast app you use. You can usually just search for Flicker Effect and you should be able to find us. So, and then with that too, one other announcement, since it's 2018, you might be thinking, so when are we doing our top 10 show? Well, that's coming up soon. We will most likely be recording that on the 14th for release on the 15th. So make sure to look for that. We're kind of delaying things a little bit because, I don't know, I think just like, everyone's coming out with their top 10 lists right now. Like, critics, everybody on the internet, it's definitely a thing. And I think most people follow the same rules of, a movie, as long as it got a limited release in 2017, as long as it's basically eligible for like the Golden Globes or the Oscars, it's a 2017 movie. And we kind of try to play by those same rules, but then it means like people like me who live not in New York or LA are stuck having to wait for movies to go wide release. Like, for example, The Post doesn't go wide release, I think, until the 12th of January. And I'm like, I really want to see that before we do that show. So I was like, let's just hold off on that top 10 show a couple more weeks. Give me a chance to see that. I think Call Me By Your Name doesn't come out here until that weekend too. So I'm going to try to see that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have you seen that one yet?
I think I saw it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
It was playing right up the street from where I live. So it was not very far at all. I didn't know that one hadn't gone wide when you said that, because it was playing at a theater that, to me, isn't it's not like it's an art house theater, and it's not like it's, they do play some of the smaller movies, but by it being there, I just thought maybe it had gone kind of wide, or a wider release than it was initially, it came out with. So I just assumed that it was probably playing local towards you.
Yeah, I think that's one of those movies that's those indie films that have gotten that kind of more just slow release every weekend. It gets a little more, because I actually checked the movie's website and you can see what cities and theaters in those cities have the movie and by weekend, and kind of scrolling through it. There's definitely theaters all over the country that have had it. And then each weekend it's like a few more get it and a few more get it. But yeah, there's been nothing in Central Florida. Yeah, not until I think the 12th we're getting one. Luckily it's the theater right down the street basically from me, so I don't have to go far. But
that's good.
But yeah, I want to really see that too, since I don't know how you felt about it. I won't really ask yet, but it's like I see it pop up on so many lists. I feel like in a way it's almost like this year's Moonlight almost. Like I feel like it's so common on top 10 lists that I'm like, I have to see this movie. I don't know.
That's interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, it has been popping up a lot. I think I heard mostly about it probably within the last couple months. I haven't really seen or heard too many lists just yet for top tens, so I haven't had that experience of knowing where everyone is placing it if it made their top ten at all. But I could see how with that type of a movie you're seeing or thinking of it as this year's Moonlight. I could definitely see the parallels there.
Yeah, it's just Moonlight was a movie that, I mean, there's no doubt people were hearing about it. It was getting a lot of Oscar buzz, but like everyday general audiences may not even have heard of Moonlight last year, you know? And same with this. I'm sure I could ask lots of people and they'd be like, what the hell's Call Me By Your Name? I've never heard of that. And I mean, I'll be honest, I've actually never seen a trailer for it. I do know the general premise. I've heard kind of what the general plot is, but I've never seen a trailer. I'm fine. I don't really need to see one. I'm going to go see it either way.
Yeah.
Anything that gets that much buzz, I'm just like, well, I got to see it. I mean, it can't be bad. I'm sure it may not be as good as I may not think it's as good as some people, but it's going to be at least decent, right? I don't know. But yeah, I want to see that. I want to see the post. I got a lot of work to do, man. I got a couple weeks ahead of me of a lot of movie watching. Basically, I've got a kind of a list on the Apple TV of movies that I'm going to rent probably in the next couple weeks and watch that I missed throughout the year. And then, yeah, a handful of movies that are in theaters that I want to see.
That's not too unusual for you, though. I mean,
no, it's basically
it
my
sucks, but
yeah.
it is your annual sort of ritual almost to start binging a whole bunch of movies before the top 10 show.
It is, and you know, is half of it. You know, it's partly kind of annoying, but at the same time, I think every year I keep saying, you know what, it's actually kind of fun though. It's kind of fun watching a bunch of movies in a small period of time that are all basically pretty good, at least, you know.
Right.
Because once I get to this point, I'm getting picky about, okay, like if I see it pop up on a couple top 10 lists, I'm like, all right, I gotta watch that. Or, you know, I'm for the most part when I'm binging these movies, they're almost all pretty good movies. I think I've rarely seen one in the mix when I'm binging toward the end of like, oh god, that was terrible. Like that almost never happens. So it's fun. I don't know. I got a lot to work.
I think I don't know if I ever have that luxury just because of the other stuff that I watch, which is TV related, and how many different TV shows and stuff I watch. If I try to binge a lot of movies, then that will for sure back me up on a lot of TV, and TV being weekly and usually everything I watch is an hour format. Then it just becomes this hassle trying to get caught up on TV more so than movies. So I try and fit my movies in where I can, when I can, even if that means that I'll go one day and see 3 movies in one day or something. I'll do that to just sort of take advantage of that day that I have to be able to see it all as compared to TV when there's probably and typically something on every day for me to watch.
Yeah, I get that. Like, it's crazy to me that I still haven't watched like basically any of season 2 of The Crown yet.
Oh, wow.
But I've already kind of gotten in that mode of like, okay, if I get free time, I'm trying to watch a movie that I need to watch.
Right.
So I'm like, I can hold off on The Crown. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can't wait to watch it. I love that show, but it can wait for now. It's going to have to wait a couple more weeks. And I don't know about you. The more I've thought about it, there's a couple movies at least that I did see early in the year that I'm like, you know what, I kind of want to rewatch it just because it's been so long. And to try to get a sense of like, I'm pretty sure it's going to be on my list, but where to put it, I almost feel like I need one more viewing because it's been a while.
Yeah, there's one movie I feel that way in particular that I don't currently have it on my list, but I could technically see putting it on my list, but I would really need to see it one more time just to know for sure whether or not to put it on there, because I already have pretty much 8, if not 9 out of the 10 spots taken. And I don't have them in any specific order yet, but I do have that many in mind that could go on the list for sure. So luckily there's not really that much left for me to see. I think there's probably as far as anything that's getting any buzz, whether it's Golden Globes or Oscar potential, I'd probably say there's only two more movies left for me to really watch before I've seen all the ones that fall into that category.
Right.
And that would be, I think, The Post and The Darkest Hour, I think, are the only other two that I haven't really seen yet.
And then, yeah, all this watching movies to kind of get ready for the top 10. There's other stuff that I haven't gotten a chance to do. Like, I still, to this day, haven't had a chance to watch Star Wars The Last Jedi yet, like, for a second time. I mean, and that definitely needs to happen. That really needs to happen.
Yeah, I actually thought you probably would have seen that a second time.
Oh, trust me, I want to, but the holidays happened again, like we said earlier, and it just, yeah, I couldn't make it work. And now with me trying to see other stuff, it's definitely not a priority. And I know it's not going anywhere. So, I mean, I'll definitely be able to still see it in the theater for a while. So, yeah, I need to do that. Cause yeah, man, that one's still sitting with me. I mean,
yeah,
it's weird. Like, I mean, and anyone listening, if don't worry, I won't talk about spoilers about the movie, but I mean, we talked about that movie for a long time on our last show, and yeah, I don't know. I'm dying to watch it again to try my best to be a little more kind of open-minded, not so much Star Wars fan about it, and just to kind of see what I think, to see if I feel a little differently, to see if I can better understand some of the critical praise, because I'm still like kind of not thrilled with it. Like,
yeah.
And it's funny too, like I was considering what the movie did. And again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but as everyone basically has probably heard at this point, I mean, there's no doubt Rian Johnson took risks. He made choices in this movie that were unexpected, to say the least. And, as I've talked about on the show before, like I was leading up to this movie for the few months leading up to it, I was starting to get excited, and I started kind of consuming a lot of other Star Wars media, reading the books, or at least listening to the audiobooks, and, reading a little bit of the comics, and just because I'm just like, man, I want to know more. And I enjoy some of the books anyway. Some of the books have been pretty good, some not so great. But I'm just like craving all this information, and just to kind of fill in some of the gaps that you don't see in the films. And then I see Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I have to say, ever since I've seen it, I haven't consumed anything. And I've lost the drive to do so. Like, I'm not saying I'm not going to. Like, for instance, I was a little ways into the second Aftermath book once I went and saw Last Jedi, and I haven't gone back to it since. And I'm going to finish it, but I don't know. Now, after watching that movie and kind of now really realizing, like, at least in this case, like Rian Johnson had free reign to basically do what he wanted. I mean, of course, he still had to, I'm sure, answer to Lucasfilm and Disney. Maybe, they could have easily gone, no, we don't like this idea, and not let him do it. But they did not basically give him an outline when he did this film. And I feel like, I don't know, it kills a lot of to me, I always kind of had this idea that there was this whole idea going into this, like there was already a plan. And when I read these other books, I feel like it's all part of the plan. And now I feel like, oh wow, now there's actually no plan. And I don't know what to think of that.
Yeah.
I mean, on one sense, I think it's great. On one sense, I'm like, you know what? That's awesome. Like, they're letting a great filmmaker come in and do his own thing. He doesn't feel restricted by, okay, we're going to let you direct this second movie, but by the way, this guy has to live, and this guy has to die, and this person has to do this, and blah, blah, blah. Like, he can just do his own thing, which in one sense, I'm like, that's awesome. But then, I don't know. As a fan of this, I feel like there really should be kind of a Kevin Feige figure that doesn't seem to exist. I don't know. I don't know. I'm really just confused about the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm still, this many weeks after, kind of feeling the same position I've felt even back then, in terms of I think the movie is good. I like the movie. I think there's, beyond just from a film point or a standpoint of how you would judge it as a film, there are issues with the movie itself that have nothing to do necessarily with the lore and what the chances he took per se are. But I think that overall, my issue that still stands with me today is similar to what you're saying, in that there just doesn't seem to be a game plan. And whereas some people seem to be appreciating that, I guess I'm more on the line of, if there's no game plan, then the same way you're appreciating the things that Ryan Johnson did with this one, who's to say that JJ just doesn't come back and try and do the things he was trying to tell in Force Awakens that undoes the things that you liked in this one?
Exactly.
So that's why I'm just kind of like, I don't like that part of it. The movie itself it is what it is. And if Ryan Johnson had did the whole trilogy, I'd be on board, because I feel like he's telling a through line story that is going to connect in ways that make sense, as opposed to feeling like it's just it seems like the people that like the chances that he took are the things that just undid things that were in the other movies. So I don't know that those are chances, or are they maybe more so things that make it harder for JJ to come in and do and tell his story? Or does it give JJ more free reign to not be tied into those things? I don't know. We'll see. But to me, just looking at it from afar, it just feels like it's too much free reign without some sort of way of being able to rein it all in and make it make sense. And that's kind of my thing. And like you said, when you're reading these books and everything that are canon, and everything takes place within the confines of what we know of what Star Wars is and has evolved into. And so far, in all the different things that I've read that are canon, there's been very little effect in the movies to them. And I'm not saying that they have to incorporate all these things into the movies that I've read in these books and any other things, but it would be kind of nice to get that sort of
like a connection.
That
more of a
connection.
That
connection, that crossover, that some way of feeling like you're just not reading exposition stories of just stuff that has no bearing really within the actual universe. Because then it starts to feel like, I mean, you can still enjoy those things on its own, but I guess I'm going forward will have to get that understanding that this probably isn't going to play into anything, because it's in the same way that when I watch Marvel TV stuff, whether it's on Netflix or on ABC with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I already know at this point not to expect any of that stuff to ever appear in the movies. At one point in time, I used to think that it would, because it's all one shared universe and it's all affecting. And so the things that happened in the movies had some sort of effect on the TV stuff. And I would always think, well, at some point it's going to be the other way around as well. Some of the stuff happening to the TV stuff would affect stuff going on in the movies. But that has, to my knowledge, is very little to none of that happening. So it just took me a while to get used to it and to say, okay, I guess that's not going to happen. They are in the same universe, but it's really not connected in that way. And so you just have to enjoy it on its own, separate from that, without any expectations of it being referenced or connected into the movies. And so I guess that's kind of where I'm at with the Star Wars canon stuff that's outside of the movies. Is I just have to get my mind wrapped around the idea that it's just for enjoyment and for understanding that it's part of this shared universe, or is part of this universe, but it's just not necessarily going to connect in any way that I would like to see.
Yeah, because as I just said, some of these Star Wars books are good, and then other ones I've read are not so good. And I would say, I mean, there's a decent amount that they're fine, but the writing's not always great. But I'll find myself like wanting to still consume it because I'm like, oh, I'm just craving this knowledge. I want to know what's going on. But now I'm like, I'm probably going to be a bit more selective. I'm just like, maybe this author, yeah, I'll read their stuff. But, unless I hear good reviews on, say, another author that maybe I haven't heard of, I'll be like, I'm not hearing good reviews. I'm going to skip it. But, yeah. I don't know. But, yeah, I need to see the movie again.
Unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. But, yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting also just hearing a lot of other opinions since we recorded our episode. And I feel like after we recorded ours, I was still like living with it for another week or so of just like reading all this other stuff to see what other people were thinking, listen to other podcasts. And I just like, and I was still just sitting with it like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know. In a lot of ways, I'm glad I've waited a while to see it again. Like, I'm kind of glad I didn't jump on like just seeing it immediately. Like right after I saw it, I've given me time to kind of think about it for a while and maybe take a different perspective when I go in finally and see it again, probably in a couple weeks. But anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think you probably will have the benefit of having spaced it out and to get away from the conversation a little bit because it has been so it's in a lot of ways toxic because of how divisive the movie is, and it's getting kind of crazy out there just based on how deeply invested people feel about the movie, and on whatever side they seem to fall, it's been getting pretty heated, and there's all kinds of news feeds in my or articles in my news feed of people who have the power and the ability to write and publish something, of them telling you basically, here's why you're watching Star Wars wrong. In a way, it's like they're trying to talk down to you in a way that's like, and it sucks because there's a lot of people who were critics who enjoyed it, and that's the majority of the type of articles I'm seeing, as opposed to someone coming from the standpoint of, I didn't like it, here's why, and this is thought out and well put together. There's more on the other side of people saying, like we were talking about earlier, of the critics talking about the bold choices and how it's different and why that's good and everything else, as opposed to some of the other issues that other people are having with it that are legitimate issues. So it's been very different to where I felt almost exhausted by a Star Wars movie in a way I've never felt before. So it's been very different. Yeah.
And the stuff that blows me away too is that even if I could get past, like you basically already said this, but like even if I can get past the stuff that just completely jarred me because I was like, oh wow, we're doing that now. Okay, now, oh wow, we're doing that now. Like that seemed to just completely dismiss The Force Awakens. Even if I could get past all that, there's still stuff about the movie that I'm like, there's problems in this movie that I can't get past as well. Like even from just a critical point of view, like going into it as not a fan, I don't think I'm going to go see this movie a second time and suddenly go, oh, you know what? That's all fine now. I don't care. Like, I just don't see it happening. So even just that alone confuses me. Like why there's so much critical praise. I don't know. Anyway. And then there's, it's funny, there was that image release, which I guess was not really, wasn't really an official image from Solo, the Star Wars spin-off film that's coming up. Mm-hmm. And that I completely forgotten that's coming out in May. I'm like, oh my God, that's soon. Like, and still, that image aside, I mean, that image was whatever. I mean, it wasn't an official release. It just looked kind of silly to me. But still, I really have no excitement about that movie. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm extremely skeptical of that film. I've been saying it from the beginning. I've been like, I don't know about a whole Han Solo backstory. I don't really like the idea of seeing somebody else play that role. And then, yeah, still as it gets closer, I don't know. I mean, once we see a first trailer, everything may change, of course. But I don't know, man. I'm definitely going to be curious to see a first teaser or full length once it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have all sort of talked about this in terms of excitement level, and I'm very curious to see exactly how this will turn out, just because of everything that's gone on behind the scenes and just by the very nature of it. We had all sort of said in the beginning that it's not necessarily a movie that you would have called out to be made, that you were looking for this to be made into something. And so it was already kind of fighting that battle, but then to go on and have the other issues that it's had with production, there's that. And then then coming off of maybe not having the last movie with The Last Jedi the way you would want to feel coming out of a Star Wars movie, it just stacks up so many chips up against it to where everybody's eyes are just in a way that I haven't seen in a long time, that people are just almost, it feels like they got their knives out and ready for this one.
Right?
To where they're
Yeah.
just ready, just like murder this thing as soon as they see some scenes about it. And if it's not like up to par in any sort of way that
Right.
they feel that it needs to be, it's just going to get ripped up. And it's just now that movie almost be, I wouldn't say dead on arrival, but it's just going to disappoint in a major way.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, I could definitely see that. It's going to have to be a really good trailer or people are just going to nitpick it to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't help but to feel almost sorry for
Like
what
Ron
is his
Howard or...
Iron Reich?
Oh, Ehrenreich. Alden Ehrenreich.
Aaron Reich, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm sure he knew that once he was making the movie, that was like this iconic role that he thought he could do it. But now it's all these other circumstances come into play, and you're just thinking, okay, well, now you've got this added pressure, and it's just everyone's really waiting to see what we're going to get with this. And yeah, I mean, I would say before I was pretty excited about it pre The Last Jedi, and I wouldn't say excited in the sense of like, I was counting down the days to Solo came out, but I was still optimistic and hopeful about the
Mm-hmm.
movie. And then after seeing Last Jedi, it deflated some of that, and it through no fault of its own, like other than what it already had been going through. But it had already gone through the things at that time before I saw Last Jedi, and I was still anticipating it. But now, then after seeing The Last Jedi and just having the feelings I had about that, then it's starting to make me wonder and question, will this be their first real big miss in terms of what they're doing? And I hope not. I hope for it to be good and want to see something fun and slightly different, and be able to accept that this is obviously not Han Solo as in Harrison Ford, but just as still the character of Han Solo is captured correctly, and just a younger version played by a younger actor. Because I've been able to accept three different people playing the role of Peter Parker Spider-Man, so there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to accept a younger version of Han Solo, but it has to still feel like Han Solo to me.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through this already with, Obi-Wan, but
Yeah.
I don't know. This still seems a lot different for some reason. I can't really pinpoint why, but it does. I mean, for one, we had a lot more Han Solo in that original trilogy than we did Obi-Wan. I mean, had a lot more screen time. We got to know him a lot better. I think that's probably the biggest reason for me. I mean, there's no doubt Obi-Wan's an iconic character, but he's not Han Solo level. So, I guess maybe that's why. I don't know. What else? What else is going on? We haven't talked about any news in a while. What do we missed? Everything? Disney buying Fox?
Yeah.
we haven't talked about that on the show.
No.
And I mean, what is there to
I
say?
think we maybe mentioned it when it was possibly happening, but I don't think we had talked about it since it happened. We may have, but I can't quite recall talking about it in depth.
No, I don't think we did. Yeah. I mean, what at this point, it's just basically it's happening, but I'm all about approval at this point.
Yeah.
Which, God, how long is that going to take?
And they said about 18 months, so...
Oh, wow.
You know, I think maybe by the end of this year, it would be all said and done. But I'm sure they'll at least have some sort of idea of whether or not it'll go through before that time, obviously, because I think they'll start looking at things. The government will start looking at things fairly soon and seeing if everything's going to pass. And I guess we'll get some sort of idea that it'll pass snuff, whether or not it will. But one person made the point of saying, when you have two big companies like that, the amount of lawyers that are looking over things to make sure it passes is probably pretty good based on how much money they probably pay these guys to be able to read and make sure they're following every letter of the law before they attempt to do something like that. So unless something weird happens for some reason that the government doesn't want it, then it seems likely that it will happen.
That makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, that's going to happen. And I guess because I remember there was talk kind of before or as it was going down, like because Fantastic Four has kind of a more complicated ownership kind of history. Would that be included? But apparently, it sounds like at least that is the case. It will be included.
Yeah, it will be included. Everything. I think at this point they have all their characters in use that they can use, with the exception of, well, I should say that they could make movies of and distribute, with the exception of Hulk. They still can't distribute because Universal has that, and the same with the Submariner, Namor. He's also under Universal as far as distribution. So, but they can always do the same thing with the Namor that they do with the Hulk and put him into, like, he's mostly associated with the Fantastic Four. So you could throw him in a Fantastic Four movie and kind of have two birds in one stone there.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. One thing I'd heard too that was kind of, I hadn't thought about it, but it made perfect sense once I read it, was that there was an article saying one of the characters it would be very, very difficult to ever see would be a character like She-Hulk, because it's sort of the same deal with the Hulk and She-Hulk, is that the Hulk people, that the characters most closely associated with that character would still be under that Universal distribution deal. So it'd be hard to ever see that character, because typically you would see her with the Hulk, and since the Hulk can't have his own standalone movie, then how would you introduce Hulk in some other movie and introduce She-Hulk in that some other person's movie? So it'd be like you're seeing Thor, but then it's like you've got the Hulk, and then they also have She-Hulk, so it's not really a Thor movie, because it's really being. So it's like, yeah, that is true. It'd be very hard to be able to introduce that character, because she would need her own amount of screen time, but you're still in someone else's movie. So how do you do that, really?
Right.
And the Hulk has to be there, because that's how she becomes the She-Hulk in the first place, through a blood transfusion from her cousin. So it's I was like, dang, that is hard. That'd be very difficult to pull off.
True. I hadn't thought about that, but I also not that familiar with She-Hulk, so what do I know?
Yeah. But I think there was one news story I saw today that was floating around
Yeah.
talking about the Netflix possibly being bought by Apple.
Oh yeah. I saw a headline, but I haven't read anything about it. So now you can fill me in.
Yeah, so the short story of it is with the new tax breaks that got signed in, there's a whole bunch of money that companies like Apple have that have in overseas accounts. And they were saying something like, I might get these numbers wrong, but in the ballpark of Apple having at least 100 to 200 billion offshore. And so to bring this part of this new law is that, or this tax cut is that they're allowing these companies to pay a one-time fee to be able to pull that money and bring it over back over here over into these shores. And so before it was a higher percentage in terms of how much they'd get taxed, and now I think it's one time 10% tax or something like that to that effect. But basically it makes it more lucrative and easier for these companies to pull that money back over. And they were saying that if Apple does that, they would have, after the taxes, a good like 89 to 95 billion dollars of money to just use on whatever they feel like using it on. Because right now, since it's just sitting overseas, they're not using that money for anything. They're not doing anything with it. But then they would be able to use it, bringing it back over here. And the idea was that some analysts were looking at things and saying, well, what could they do with that money? What would they want to do with that money? And the idea was sort of floated out there that, well, they've been trying to get into some sort of streaming service for the longest time. So with that money, they could technically buy Netflix. And so that's kind of how that whole thing started. There hasn't been any word or any rumblings in terms of that actually happening, but
More a
that was
theory
just
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
That makes sense. What do you think of it? What
I
would you
don't know
think
how
if
to
that happened? Was that something that you're just like, oh God, that sounds terrible? Or
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it honestly, because in one way it's like, yeah, okay, it makes sense, but what would they do? How will they change things? Because obviously there'll be some amount of change. I don't know that Apple would be the same way Disney is, and that they might buy up a studio and still let that studio run for the most part the same way that they were before they bought them, and just collect the money because
right?
they're letting them do their thing. I don't know that Apple would do that. I don't think that they'll just let Netflix continue doing what it's doing and just be the main person that is essentially just kind of paying the bills for them. That they seem like they would do what Apple does and kind of wall it off from everything else and make it more
Exclusive to
yeah,
Apple products, and
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I actually don't know if because I think Netflix is so ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Like to do that, and I mean, there's no doubt that Netflix has the products to draw people in, but I don't know. There's still so many other options out there too that if suddenly it's like a lot of people who don't own Apple products and like, oh shit, I can't get Netflix anymore, without buying an Apple TV or like, I don't know. I think a lot of other companies would take that moment to really try to shine and pull those people away, and so those people won't bother with Netflix anymore. I don't know.
Mm.
Like with Amazon, I mean, there's a lot of content on there, especially if you subscribe to those things because, I just want movies I can stream. Like, I could go on Amazon Prime all day and just watch stuff. And other than, I mean, there's no doubt that Netflix original programming is
Yeah,
unique and
that's where I was
mostly
gonna
pretty
say.
great.
Hmm.
But But I don't know. There's still so much other content out there that really you could fill your time with other stuff. And
You could, but if you're already into a show like, say, The Crown,
yeah,
and then you got your season 3 or season 4 coming up of The Crown by the time all that would happen, and there's other shows that you like on there, and such as like maybe some people that like Peaky Blinders or one of the other shows that just came out, The Mindhunters, and those types of shows that are, like you said, exclusive to Netflix. Then if Apple all of a sudden said, okay, well, we want to promote our own stuff and have this be part of our streaming service of different things that we're offering. So we're not going to allow Netflix to appear on any Xbox Ones or any Rokus or any Fire Sticks. You're going to have to get an Apple TV in order to be able to watch Netflix. Then more than likely, I would probably end up buying an Apple TV because there's a decent amount of shows on Netflix that I like to watch, and it would literally force me into buying one of their products, even though I wouldn't want to, because I watch enough stuff on Netflix as well as other streaming services that they'd kind of box me into that corner.
yeah, and there's no doubt there's a lot of people like you that would do that. I mean, I might be included if I didn't already own Apple products, but I do, so I'm fine. But I don't know. It still seems like it would just be a bad enough business decision that I don't know that I would work out in their favor. I don't know.
I hope so.
My bet would be, for the most part, if Apple buys Netflix, it is going to be a more, I wouldn't say hands off, but basically Netflix is going to basically operate as it has. That's kind of how I see it. I mean, because like you can.
That's what I would hope.
You could run iTunes on a Windows computer right now. It's not like Apple doesn't play nice with anybody ever. I mean,
right.
That would be my bet. I think for the most part it wouldn't change much. I mean, like, I don't know. It's not really the same, but it's not really the same at all. But they bought Beats, and Beats hasn't really changed, has it? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you could buy Beats products everywhere still, and I don't know.
But I agree. It's different in that it's hardware.
Yeah.
Rather than they're a streaming service or a service, to continuously make money on month after month. I feel like they would try and figure out a way to make that work to their advantage in a way that isn't already doing what it's just doing. That they would do something to tweak something, change something slightly in a way that works for them.
I mean, the only thing I could see is that I don't know how, but using Netflix on an Apple TV as opposed to on a Roku, something about the experience on the Apple TV would be better. I don't know. Something about the use of the app, the way it works. Maybe it just be more fun to use, more interesting. I don't know how you would even do that, but you know what I mean? Like maybe something they would just make it more appealing on an Apple device, but you could still run it on a Roku. You could still run it on a Fire TV, on a Chromecast. Yeah, I don't know. I think for the most part, it wouldn't be that big a deal. I think it's more just Apple consuming things.
That's what I would hope for.
I would hope so.
If that comes to be,
Well, I guess with that, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Hopefully we'll be recording a show this Sunday, and it's been a while, so we'll do our best to try to keep that as short as we possibly can, since we probably will have a lot of movies to talk about. But we'll be recording this Sunday, hopefully. And then, as I mentioned, we will hopefully be doing our top 10 show a week from then. So look for the top 10 show to drop around January 15th, we're hoping. I'm excited.
Yeah, can't wait to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, even though I still have so much stuff to watch, I haven't sat down and like created a list yet, but I kind of, I've definitely thought about the movies that'll probably make the list, and I'm like, shit, I probably have almost 10 already, like maybe,
Yeah, I could see that.
So it'll. I have a feeling it's going to turn into, after the next couple weeks is said and done, I'm going to be like, oh damn it, I'm going to have to keep this off the list, keep that off the list. I mean, that happens every year.
Yeah.
But thanks for joining me.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. I always like these Wednesday, side effects type shows that we do because it's pretty easy, chill, laid back, and we're just pretty much just letting letting it flow as it goes. No
Yeah.
real format to it. We
Well,
just whatever we feel like talking about. So it's always kind of cool to have the laid back show too.
yeah, it's a little more relaxed. It's nice. But yeah, as we always mention at the end of the show, for those listening, if you're trying to find us out there on social media accounts, if you just want links to that, you can go to flickereffect.com and there's links on the right. But you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/flickereffect. We're Flicker Effect on Instagram, and we're Flicker_effect on Twitter. I would say, I guess those are the big ones. Yeah, I'm David Lott.
I'm Bobby Jackson.
Thanks for listening.